Well, everyone loves a bébé jumeau. How could you not? Jumeau controlled the doll industry in France for several decades, beginning with the work of his father with the beautiful early poupées, and then when Emile took over, becoming the age of the bébés. And he evolved through a period of time in which we find so many beautiful examples. I'm so happy to tell you that there are many of the classic Tête model bébés in this auction, but we also are very, very fortunate and grateful to have a wonderful collection of some early portrait bébés, or the early premier models or portrait models as they're known, if they were of the luxury quality. And I put some of them out here for you to see, and I'm really just going to leave them here and let the camera keep kind of swishing over them so you can see that very thing. I wanted to, on the one on the right, I have over here by herself, because I think this is very, very notable for her very pale bisque and very, very, the eyes themselves are pale, but they really seem to ping, to stand out because of the delicacy of her complexion, her wonderful costume. And I love it when they have their original lamb's wool wigs, because they're so soft against the complexion. She is an outstanding, outstanding doll that would love to live with you. Nearby her is her brown-eyed sister. And notable, look at the comparison between the two dolls in the size of the eyes. Maybe one or two, not much time would elapse from this very earliest model to the time when the eyes became very large and childlike. Remember, the early bébé heads evolved from the actual model for the poupée head, and with some distinct differences, one being slightly rounder face, and most dramatically, the very large eyes, which this doll is a perfect example of one, and the brown eyes, so really rare to find on the bébés. So this is a very, very beautiful example to have right here. Standing next to her, again, folks, if the eyes have it, then this girl has it. These are probably some of the most, next to the AT I just showed you, these are some of the most beautiful eyes I've seen on a French bébé. And somehow the way the costume is working on this doll, it really strikes them out and brings them out all the more. Very, very beautiful doll. Let me just turn her around so you can see the back of her costume. Oh, I love her face. I'm glad I turned her around. Hi there, dear. Lovely. Maybe you can get the eyes from a different angle now too when I turn it around. We have two, next to her, two blonde-haired examples of early bébés, and I believe these are both, yeah, they're both blue-eyed. And even though these are made, I would say probably the same year, very early, 1878 period, they have different looks to them. And it's interesting when I saw them in the catalog, because one person had called to say, they wanted information on such and such a doll. I believe it was this one. And I said, well, tell them to also look at this one, because they seem like sisters, so much alike, and yet if you know them, you know a little bit of difference that they have. And I honestly am hard put to say which one I like the best. You have to make your own choice, or maybe you say, I'd take either one or the other. They could live in my house very happily. Very, very beautiful dolls. And again, notable from this early time period for the very, very delicate, pale bisque, soft blushing, wonderful original bodies, nice early costumes, great dolls. We move into, over on the far right, starting in about the 1882, 1883 period, the doll known forever as Bébé Triste because of her character expression, sculpted for Émile Jumeau by Carrier-Belleuse, the famous French sculptor, and said to be inspired by any number of people. I want to talk to you about portrait dolls some other time. I want to do a whole talk about that. It's so fascinating. But at any rate, this is a size 10, one of the harder sizes to make. The Bébé Triste was only made in sizes beginning with size 9. You will never find a smaller size than that. Size 9 and size 10, quite hard to find, and this is a very beautiful one, again, with that very sought-after, delicate, pale bisque. Very, very gorgeous doll. I have here next to her in the pink, another one of the early dolls, kind of belongs in this period right here with her sisters. You can see, again, the same kind of early look. What you will find on the earlier dolls, you're going to find more unique painting of the dolls. By the time the Jumeaux got up to the Tep model, they became really quality control is what I would call it. Probably things were done with a lot more standardized methodology of how the painting was to be done. In these early years of the Bébé, a lot more individuality in painting, so you can have different looks achieved, and that's why each one of these, although the same model, you'll find differences in their face, slight differences, kind of like three sisters in a way. Now I have three other examples here to show you. This is a really interesting one. This doll is marked ED, the girl in the maroon, and I'm going to move these because I kind of like you to see her dress, which I think is really pretty. It's an original factory dress. Let me turn it around. This is from the Luann Gulissarian collection too. Beautiful. Look at, do you see what I'm talking about, the standardized painting? Much more specific. And you have to decide what you like the best. Do you like the more, I guess I would call it freeform or more naive painting of the earlier ones, because that's what it is, or do you like the highly perfected painting of the later models? This particular model, marked ED, was marked for, was a kind of a thank you from Émile Jumeaux to his foreman, Dulé, Monsieur Dulé, who had worked for him for many years, and so he let him have a doll that bore his initials, ED. The face is very different, and in my way of thinking, it came out in 1892, and it is probably part of the very beginning of Jumeaux's line of art character dolls. Then we have another very, very lovely example of the Jumeaux, and I want to look at something here. Hold on a moment. Okay, as you can see the markings, she is the classic Tep model, but wait, let's look at her face. This is not really the face of the Tep model. Well, it sort of is the face, but it's different. It's much sweeter. It's much shyer. The Tep, in its high period, became very dramatic. This doll still retains some of the features of the earlier portrait or premier bébés, with a very, very shy look, a wider nose bridge, very beautiful doll, very sought after. So sometimes I tell people this because they don't always be misled by the title of a doll or the name of the doll or how the doll is marked. You have to look at the doll itself and make your judgment on that particular item. And then finally here, I just wanted to show you, so here is the classic Tep face. Absolutely classic, perfected painting, beautiful creamy bisque, the lashes, the brows, the lips, everything is uniform and perfect. That is the idealized French doll. And you choose what period you like. Do you like this period, or do you like the earlier period with its innocence and naivety? She also, I wanted you to see her because she's wonderful wearing her original Jumeaux shoes and her original Jumeaux blue flowered chemise dress that he introduced when he wanted to. Originally, Jumeaux produced all of his dolls in, they would be in a very simple chemise, like a muslin, almost a slip, or in a very, very fancy dress done in their studios. Eventually he saw, well, there ought to be something in between. Because people want to dress on their doll, but they can't afford to have the very luxury silk ones. So he came up with a design for his flowered chemise, and he had the blue flowers or the red flowers, either one. And of course, his signed shoes, which were very, very important in his field. One thing that people tend to forget about Jumeaux is that costumes were so important to him. This was a presentation that we originally offered in our catalog, The Beautiful Jumeaux, many, many years ago, and it has come back to us to offer again. I'm pleased, still in the original box and in the same beautiful condition it was. But look at this. These are Jumeaux clothes. Look at that blue silk dress. Is that extraordinary? The matching blue silk parasol with the horse head, or rather the dog head handle or grip. Original Gemot white cotton dress with like a waffle weave skirt, wonderful tucks, cut work, and embroidery, and the aqua ribbons. The matching hat for the dress. The corset, and we know that it was done for a size 10 Gemot because we see the 10 stamped inside, so you know what size this costume was designed for, what size bébé. And finally, the little slip. And it still has the tag from our original auction of the beautiful Gemot. Because Gemot was so prolific in his manufacturing of dolls and really kind of overpowered many of the other firms, we sometimes tend to forget the absolutely magnificent production of other bébés by other companies. And we have some wonderful examples to show you in this collection so you can see what a wide variety of faces there are and kind of choose which type appeal most to you. Over here on your right, you see four examples of earlier bébés from the early 1880 period. In the gold, the girl in the gold is the bébé Theriault. This doll shows up very, very seldom. I think the firm was perhaps fairly short-lived in their production of their dolls and certainly never turned out the quantity of what Gemot had. But this is a stunning example with very beautiful complexion. And I'm going to turn her around so you can see her wig, her bonnet, the beautiful, rare brown eyes. And she has her original body, which you'll see when she comes around, in a really splendid antique gold dress with braid. Very, very lovely. And then we have dolls, which I always think the early bébés by Raybury and Delfire and Gaultier are very, very difficult to distinguish. To me, they look so much alike. So we have the two larger examples are both marked with the FG with the block letter markings. Block letter markings indicating an earlier time period from about 1880. And these were both made by Gaultier. I think the larger one is very deserving of having her costume shown in great detail because it is really quite splendid. She has this wonderful little bag. We look at the fringed tulle. And she has her parasol with, this is with the horsehair handle and the wonderful lace edging at the top, a beautiful white lace gown. And when I turn her around, look at the bonnet first of all on her face. And now watch when I turn her around. That bonnet is absolutely stunning. Beautiful doll, stunning doll. And by the way, she has a name. She is Josephine. She has a name brooch. So if you want to own a Josephine doll by Ferdinand Gaultier, early block letter markings, you could not do better than this, unless you wanted to have this one, which is her younger sister. And this is the early model with the early kid bébé body, indicating, again, this is the composition body, this is the kid body. This would be like 1 or 2 years earlier. And, you know, its major point is that it really kind of substantiates its early age, although you can certainly see that in her face as well. Very, very beautiful. Has the bisque hands, the kid body and the bisque hands, and a lovely antique costume. And then, looking just like her, and even tinier, but it's not a Gaultier. It's Raybury and Delfire, marked with the RD block letter markings. And here she is. Let me turn her around. You can see that bonnet from the back. It's just great. Oh, her little hat got a little crooked here. Let's fix it. Okay. She has a wonderful costume, that wonderful pink woolen antique dress with the sort of plush edging and the matching muff. and this hat with the fabulous decorations. Wonderful doll. So those are 4 early bébés from the French period. Then we come to another early, there are, I think, about 6 or 7 Steiners, dolls by Jules Steiner in this auction, and I just brought one out to show you here. No, I actually brought 2. But this is the early C period, the Series C, a very, very desirable doll in a stunning early costume. The Steiners are notable for having a much more childlike face. They never got really highly dramatized like the Bru or like the Jumeau, but very round, almost Germanic type looking face, like German dolls more. Very, very beautiful and gentle. And here's another Steiner though. Here is a later period. This would be like 1890. This is the figure A model, and wearing a dress with the original silk label of Au Nom Bleu, the Parisian department store. And their dresses, if you start to study the ones that have the original labels in them, you really can identify when you see a doll at some point wearing this costume that might not have the label, then you will know it is also from Au Nom Bleu. Very, very specific and stylized in how they made these little costumes. I love this little size doll. It is so precious. Look at her original body, everything about her. Look, check out her little braids at the back. She has these dainty earrings, and then she has little childlike braids. Very, very sweet little doll. Now, you think this doll, at first when you look at it, you think she might be a Jumeau, but her marking is Mascotte, M-A-S-C-O-T-T-E, Mascotte. And this was the marking in this particular case of Mayfrere's company of Paris. They made dolls very, very similar to Jumeau's, but they didn't make them for very long, and they didn't make very many. So when you can find a doll with the Mascotte marking on it, that's a treasure to look for. And when you can find one in this size, I've never seen a Mascotte in this size before. Absolutely, again, beautiful doll. I hope you'll be with us on the 22nd, 23rd, because we're going to be excited all day to be showing these wonderful things. Remember, there's 500, 600 lots in that day, and we're just showing you a fraction of them now. There's so many wonderful things. So let me see, who am I going to do next? Here's a doll that has mystery markings on it, BP. I know I should know who that is, but I can't. When I was doing the cataloging, I couldn't recall it, and I know one of you are going to come out and tell me that you know who it is, and I'm waiting to have the answer from you. Then we have this girl. Check out her eyes. Talk about drama. This is an unbelievable doll. This is a doll by Henri Del Cua. Henri Del Cua. He made a variety of about 3 or 4 different dolls, and they all seem notable and instantly recognizable because of those almost bulbous eyes. And very dramatic. Let me show you from the side so you can see how deep the paperweight is. In this case, a very, very delicate and beautiful painting on them. Sometimes his dolls are marked Paris. Sometimes they just will have a size number, but very, very unique in the modeling of the face. Okay, let me see, we did her. We have then the Eden Bébé by Fleischmann and Blodel. With a very, again, we get around into the turn of the century now. So we are past the high period of the French dolls, and we're getting into dolls that have more of a, almost kind of like the quality of the German dolls, and they were made on a more budget basis. But this doll is marked Eden Bébé by Fleischmann and Blodel, a pretty, really pretty little doll. And then finally, one of my favorite manufacturers was Giovanni. Giovanni made this very stylized face. When you see it once, you'll always recognize it. The dolls are sometimes marked JJ, sometimes they're not marked, sometimes they're just marked J. He appeared to make them only for a very short period of time. But again, if you're trying to get a cross-representation of French dolls and you want to have different types of faces in your collection, we've given you a selection of different models and manufacturers that are good for you to look for. And to me, Giovanni should rank kind of near the top. It's a special doll. We have really fortunate. We haven't had many in a while of really good Minionettes or all bisque dolls. And I hesitate to say miniature all bisque dolls because this collection includes, I'm showing you only one, I think there are like 10 large all bisque dolls. And in all bisque terms, this is a large doll. If you look at her, for example, she's holding a little 3-inch all bisque bilo. So you can imagine how large this doll is. Very, very rare to find in the all bisque size. She's, however, not as early as some of the other pieces. We have some great early all bisque. I love this little fat girl. Look at her little bare feet. Aren't they wonderful? And they're tiny. These tiny little ankles and tiny little bare feet. That's why we left her without shoes, because you really need to see her that way. She's very large. Look at the unique modeling of her hands. The little folded fist on the right hand, and then the little cupped hand on her left. And she's just great. Wonderful early bisque, a great expression, original costume, a great doll. Oh, here, she's floating in the air there. All right, but this is another very good example. And again, we're trying to show you on all of these when they do their little lineup. I hope the camera at some point will sweep across their legs so you can see the variation in boots and bare feet and shoes that you have on all of these dolls. So here she has the little black ankles. Again, they have these chubby legs with these tiny little ankles, which I think is just pretty sweet. Now here's another good example. This is by Gabriel Quinlan, and she again, I hope you're able to see the legs, the stockings, and the peach-colored shoes. Very, very different, a very unique type of shoe to be finding on this doll. We come over this way, and I think we have another little barefoot girl, if you can see her again. Compare her to the one I showed you before. It's really the same type of doll. She has the folded fist, the the other hand open, and her little chubby legs with the tiny, tiny little bisque bare feet. Then look at her. Again, a beautiful face. I think she's one of the first lots in the catalog. She actually is lot number 2 in the catalog. And she has beautiful blue painted stockings, but not the high ribbed ones. These only go up halfway up her calf, so a variation. 2-strap shoes, all right, and very gorgeous face. A lovely blue costume that enhances it. And she has the Simon Halbig 886 markings on her. And we have the famous yellow ankle boot doll. And this one is a little different because her stocking variation is a little different with the ribbed, the vertical ribbed stocking going up to the knees, and then below it, the ankle boots with the painted spats at the side and the buttons on them. And again, original wig, a beautiful doll, wonderful modeling of the bent arms. Look at that, that's just great. And then finally, the Simon & Halbig, once again, they made the all bisque dolls for a number of years, probably 25 or 30 years, and they tended to really have high quality in them. And one of their models is known euphemistically as the black stocking girl, because all the dolls were painted with black molded stockings up to the thighs, which was very typical for child wear at the time. And I think is a kind of a good teaching tool if you're teaching fashion from that time period, to say, look, this is what the clothing was. They wore those black stockings. And think about it, when they were out walking in the streets, then that's what, in the fields and the mud, that's what these would protect them. And this is an original factory costume, and again, could probably be owned. I would not have a lot of argument if someone said, oh, that's au non bleu. I'd say, well, it certainly does have that appearance. Again, another example of the black stocking girl by Simon & Halbig. And I can take her out so you can just see the stockings. Okay, and she fits in here. This was the type of presentation that au non bleu was famous for. The dolls in the fitted compartments with various clothes that were pinned on it, little accessories, like there's a little, I guess it's a, I don't know, a brush, and there's a little clock, and there's a bib and a collar, and all sorts of wonderful little accessories for this little Simon & Halbig black stocking girl in her wonderful gift presentation. And then everyone is always looking for these. These are French, and these were the French Minionettes, and they're in their original Marquis and Marquise costumes as they would have been sold in the store so many years ago. They would date from about the 1882 period, and they were called poupées de poche. Pocket dolls, basically, is how it would translate, because they were so little a child could have them and just stick them in their pocket and have them for play. And these are all original in their original presentation. So that's a really good example of some of the many all bisques we have in this one thing leads to another event.